Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing sieges and covering them in more depth, and let's get going. So we'll just move the mouse down, and again we've got some options here. We've got auto resolve, encircle, so that'll surround the settlement. We'll cover that at a later time, but that lets us just sort of sit outside and we can wait and sort of drain the enemy down. But what we're going to want to do really is take the settlement as soon as we can, because it will enable us to advance the campaign. You can sit outside if you want, but it will slow things down, and doing that will weaken the enemy army over time for you. So if you really want to maximize your chances of winning, you can do that, but we're going to pick fight battle. So just move your mouse down to the fight battle button and left click. Excuse me. We can see a preview overview of the battle here, and it's kind of a chaos cross sort of circle shape, and we can see on the green outline our deployment area. We can in this outside on the middle, and you'll see as there are some building sites on the map when you actually do the battle.
Unleash your Frost Maiden's arcade
So you can see it again all up here.
Use her spells to secure victory.
Okay, so he's just talking about magic now. So if you want to read these, go ahead, that's fine. It's just to give you an overview on magic. And you can see she's got Maiden's Kiss and Ice Sheet. So one of them lowers speed and charge, that just debuffs the enemy. And the other one, it actually deals damage and it causes a frostbite effect. If you look down closely there, excuse me, if you look closely, you can see the frostbite effects there in the UI at the bottom of the UI when you select the spell, and it says frostbite 10 seconds, speed minus 30%. So that's the effect it will have on the enemy. And you'll notice as well it says damage per second 18. There's a duration of 2 seconds, so obviously that adds up to 36 damage in total. And it's saying as well 0%. And then there's an armor icon there. That means it won't do any armor piercing damage at all. So in terms of damage, this spell is, you know, to be honest with you, it's not that great, but it will slow the enemy down. So it's something. It will be useful to us. And I'll just have a look at I'll just show you the spells and winds of magic now, because we have a wizard type character hero. So now this winds of magic tab is unlocked. Whenever we select a spell, it will tell us at the top right there how much it costs, and it will subtract that automatically in a preview. If you look closely, you'll see that the winds of magic are actually changing in real time as we select that, but it won't actually detract until you cast the spell, but it's just giving you a preview there of what it will be, so it's quite useful. I think that was another change from Warhammer 2 to 3, and it'll do the same thing, exactly the same thing there. It'll give you a preview and it will tell you what you will have. Okay, so now we're ready to carry on. So I'm just going to show you now how to quickly and easily manage your whole army in a few different ways. So you can select the entire army now just by holding down the left button and dragging the mouse, and you can create a box with that, and then you can let that go, and you'll notice that the UI will sort of light those units up, and it will also do that in the unit tiles at the bottom. So they are now selected. You can control them. If you hold down the right button and drag it, and don't let it go, it will give you a preview of exactly where units will be. And you can move around again with WASD and zoom in with your mouse when you're doing this, do whatever you like. It will stay selected as long as you don't let go of the right mouse button. It will give you a preview of where you're going to be. So you can do that if you like in the deployment phase, and it will move them immediately because real-time battle isn't active yet. And as I said, our deployment zone is all along the outside of this settlement. So we can do this. You can drag and drop your troops anywhere within this deployable area anywhere that you want. But we're probably just, to be honest with you, we're probably just going to stick to attacking from one angle. We might send in our cavalry from a different angle just to cause distraction, because our cavalry are fast and kind of irritating to deal with the enemy, so they'll probably do that actually. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the control key to select multiple units, and now there's 2 of them. You hold down control and then you select with the left button. Then you have 2 units selected, or you can just select them with the box again to pick those out. And then you're going to redeploy them with the right button somewhere else. This is just what I'm doing. You don't have to do this. You can keep all your army together if you want to, and it might be safer for you, so I might recommend just doing that if you're a bit worried about the safety of units. And then you can press Control G, that will group those, and now those selected units are hotkeyed to the 1 key, so whenever you want to go back to them, if you press 1 once, it will select them. If you press it twice, it will select them and it will move directly to that selection. So I'll move over here now, press 1 twice, and it brings me back directly to them. You can do that with multiple times with all your hotkeys. And my second group now is going to be you can select your whole army with Control A, by the way, and that ignores any groups you have, but we'll look at that again in a bit. Anyway, I'll select these with a box using the method I showed you before, and I'm just going to drag them over here, and now you can see they're all deployed in this area. And now we can, first though, we want to really reorganize this formation, so I'm going to show you how to make your own formations now. The selection over there doesn't really need a formation because there's only 2 units, but this selection needs to be more organized. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press Control and double click, and that will select all the Cossars of this type, and then so the Cossars with spears are all selected now, so Control and left click will do that. And then you can select even more units holding down Control. So we're going to want the Cossars as well, but it didn't select them because they're not armed with spears. So now we have all of our missile units selected. We're just going to drag and drop them behind our line now, because we don't want to get them involved in a melee attack. And we're going to put all our melee units, particularly our Sar Guard, in front, because those are our best melee troops. Our Cossars with spears are going to be specialised against cavalry, so they'll be our second line, and they're largely there to protect our archers from cavalry charges. Our heroes are just going to be kept with the main line to protect it. So that's how you're going to line up your troops roughly. It's up to you exactly how you want to do it, but that's my preference. And now when they're in a position you want them to be in, you can select them with box and hold down Control and press the G key, and you'll notice now that there's a second group there. So they're now in formation. You can move them around as you want, anywhere that you choose, and they will stay in that formation. If you want to exit that formation at any time, you can just do the same again, press Control G, and then you can move around those units around freely as you choose. But we're gonna group those. They're in group formation now, and we're going to use them like this for much of the battle. And the other group, they're also in formation, but we're going to go back to our main army and start the battle, because I think it's about time. Yeah. And we're just going to advance our army now using the right button, and you'll notice that they're all running. So if you see down here, all moving fast. If you want to change that, you press the R button and they'll just move slower. And that brings me to the point of fatigue. You'll notice that when you highlight your units here, they are currently fresh. If you run them around too much, if you fight them too much, they'll get tired and they'll get less effective. Something always worth keeping in mind. Fatigue can play a big role in particularly long battles. But at this point, we're going to want to pay attention to our cavalry, so I'm just moving over to them now. I'm going to move them over to another point because it looks like the enemy is in the way, and cavalry don't do very well in sustained engagements. You're going to want to hit the enemy in the flanks with them whenever you can. So I'm going to be moving them to another point. I'd recommend you do the same if you're in the same situation. And we're just going to be moving now our archers as close as possible to try and bring them into range of the enemy Forsaken. You don't have to keep formation at this point. You can move the armies even closer, and then you can return to formation later just by pressing 2, and it will select your whole formation. You can move them as they were, but at the moment you're going to want to move your archers individually closer to the enemy. Using control, you can select them as multiples using the method I showed you like before. And you're going to bring any melee units back here because they're just going to get in the way of any of your shooting units, any of your missile units. But at the moment, you know, they're not in particular danger of being assaulted, so you just want to be bringing them close to the enemy and firing. And if you highlight the enemy, you'll notice that they have shields. They have a shield barrier ability because they're siege troops. And we're just getting rid of that barrier now, and we're starting to deal health damage to their health bar. That's what you want. The siege are not particularly tough once you've gone through their shields. And we're just going to sit here now and pelt them with arrows. And I'm just checking up on my cavalry. And moving back to my main formation with the 2 key. You can move between your formations, like I said, using the hotkeys 1 and 2. That's a good way of very quickly moving around the battlefield. Okay, so now it's proving a bit difficult to lure them out, so we're going to bring our heroes forward at this point and just use the speed setting because it's taking a while to sort of wean them down, but we are gradually, as you can see here, we're hitting them and they are getting lured out a bit by our hero and lord. Actually, I'm going to bring the wizard back because she's vulnerable and just rely on Yuri at this point to try to damage the enemy and lure them out for you. And he has this ability, Wolf's Howl, as well, and you can use this now and it should deal some damage, and you can activate Urson's Roar again and he'll become more effective in combat in fighting them. And the combined missile attacks there and his ability have wiped that enemy unit out. And we're just going to pick, and like in the battle before at Dervingard, we're just going to pick each unit off one by one at a time. And I've noticed here, I think with my cavalry we have possibly an opening. So this is what we're looking for with the cavalry because they're fast. And we've found an opening enemy settlement, and we're going to exploit that and try and move and take a point within the settlement. Like I said before, pre-battle, we've got all these points that you can capture, these supply locations. These are what you want to actually win the battle and put the defender at disadvantage. Anyway, Yuri's taken a bit of damage now, so I'm just going to pull him back because he's in some slight trouble. And you don't particularly want him to be wounded in battle because it will negatively affect your whole army. So if he is getting hurt, just pull him away, as that's going to be a headache for you if he gets hurt in battle. I'm just casting a spell with her like I showed you. They work much in the same way like Yuri's abilities do, but you have to sort of select the spell and activate it in battle. That might take a bit of practice for you. I might do a separate video on that completely. And we're just using whatever abilities we've got here to sort of hit. Most of the damage though has been dealt by our archers here, and the chosen there have been pretty much destroyed without us really getting involved that much in melee, which is good. And we're just going to go over now to our cavalry and see how they're doing, and yet they've made it into the settlement and they're taking that point, and so that's going to distract the enemy forces away from their defense, and it's going to weaken them basically. So at this point we're going to move into the settlement with our main army because the enemy force has been distracted by our cavalry, and they're now reacting to it, and we're just about to take a point with them. So you notice that this bar is filling up and there's a green arrow there, and the point is about to be taken. So if there's any defences or structures that are next to that point, they'll then be destroyed, so it can be very useful for you to do that, and very distracting for the enemy, so I'd recommend it. And again, just at this point we're moving our main army into the settlement because it's not really defended now, this entrance, and so you can exploit that, take advantage of it. If you see an opening, you know, use it. Pun kind of intended, sort of intended, I suppose. Another thing that you can do with your missile units, if they're in trouble at all when they're in a settlement, you can turn, or anyway, you can turn skirmish mode on with the M hotkey, and they will automatically evade the enemy troops. So something really, you know, useful I've found is when you have a lot of missile units on the field and it's hard to manage them all, you can turn on skirmish mode. It doesn't always work properly in the way that you mean it to, but in some cases it can work wonders. So skirmish mode, yeah, something to use selectively, and takes a bit of practice, but can be quite powerful. And we're just moving back to our main army now, and like I said before, just try to stay focused and on killing enemy units one by one, and moving your army as a block where possible, with, you know, your melee units complementing your missile units where possible, and filling any gaps. So at this point I'm just bringing some of my melee units forward to consolidate our position and protect our archers, because your archers are pretty weak in melee and they won't stand up to siege, so that's what we're doing. And we're just moving our melee troops forward towards the enemy lines at this point, because we want to ideally get as many points as we can. Oh, and unfortunately we've been caught by the enemy troops here, so we're going to just move away if we can, because cavalry don't do well in sustained engagements, and we're just going to try to keep distracting the enemy now and moving around them with the cavalry, distracting them. And we might actually have an opening to charge from, because cavalry are good at flanking, so that's what we're going to be thinking about doing now. It's just supporting our line, our main army now. And I think we'll think about using our spells a bit more at this point, because we've been a bit lax on spells, admittedly. But you know, if you're ever worried about your battle, how it's doing, you can see at the top of the screen there you've got your sort of allied troop count, enemy troop count. It'll tell you your odds of winning. It also tells you your current set of momentum whenever you're in a siege, and it will tell you sort of what kind of bonuses or negatives you're getting from sort of how your siege has progressed. So, and it's, at the moment I'm getting plus 8% melee attack, plus 4 leadership, and vigor loss per second. So that's quite useful for me. And the more points you take, the more of those kind of bonuses you're going to be getting. So that was another new mechanic that was brought into the game. I'm just going to turn off now. We're going to toggle on melee mode, so you can do that with F, and that will turn our missile light war sleds into a unit that can charge, and we're going to charge into the enemy in the back, because that's what cavalry are good at, just charging in. And we're going to cast Ice Maiden's Kiss now on this army, and you'll notice that I directed the spell there. This is a breath type, sort of wind type spell. You can direct it by holding down the left button, and then you choose the direction you want the spell to go, and that'll take a bit of practice, and I'll probably show you again how to do that in a later video. But she did some, you know, she's done some damage there, about 2,000, which is probably, you know, similar to what one of my missile units has done, so she's doing fine. She's doing just fine, our hero is.
Frost Maiden, seeking opportunity.
And we're just consolidating our troops around the enemy position now. As I showed you before, just try and, whenever possible, try and flank the enemy line because it will weaken their morale and their troops will start to fall apart. And we'll target them with our missile units. Unfortunately, we're in danger of getting charged here, so we need to bring up some melee troops to protect us, and we'll bring back our archers where possible to avoid them being engaged. So it's kind of a granular sort of focused approach on micromanaging your units to use them to the best situation, you know, whatever they're best suited for in a particular case. Going to use Yuri's ability now that he acquired from his sword, but that might actually backfire on us, so we'll pull them away. Okay, now that was quite good actually. So those abilities that Yuri has, they work similarly to his active abilities, like I showed you before, Ocean's Roar, but you have to actually sort of select them and then target them at a point on the battlefield. That might take a bit of practice, and I'd recommend just you could always try just running a custom battle and experimenting with spells and abilities for that, but I might do another video on that together to cover that in more detail. So our Cossars have got engaged there. We don't really want them to be engaged, so we'll pull them away. And we'll engage with the light war sleds. And I'll just pause it briefly now, and I'm just going to talk about some stats and unit specializations in the battle. So if you highlight your light war sled, you notice they have missile strength, so they have ranged attacks like what I was using earlier, and some of the damage they've been doing has been from that, as they've just been firing as they move around. But if you go over to their weapon strength stat here on the left, you'll notice that they have bonus versus infantry. So this is a really useful ability, and it just increases any damage that you deal to any infantry that you charge and fight. So they're kind of specialised against infantry basically in a minor way, but they are still specialised. So they'll be useful for this particular case. And if you highlight your armoured Cossars with spears, you'll notice that because they have spears, they have bonus versus large. And it says here there's an increased chance of hitting enemies that are cavalry size or larger. So again, like I was saying in previous videos, they are specialised against cavalry. So ideally, that's what you're going to be trying to match them against cavalry whenever possible. So it's that rock, paper, scissors style of system. I would say, if you didn't know how to bring up this menu, by the way, like I said before, you can toggle it with I. You can't toggle it in the campaign map, it just comes up automatically, but in battles you can toggle it with I. It's very useful. Just a bit of inside knowledge for you. I found, generally speaking, that one of the most useful stats in the game is actually melee defense. Health is also pretty important, but if your unit has melee defense, some of the best units in the game and best staying power have melee defense. And what that does is it basically means that you're less likely to get hit whenever you're in combat. So your unit will survive longer, and it'll potentially, because it survives longer, it'll end up dealing more damage. Because a lot of the time, particularly in very competitive battles, it's questionable as to whether your units will survive or not. And if they don't survive, obviously they're not going to be dealing any damage. So that's something to think about. Yep. So we'll go briefly now just over all of the stats. So you've got armor, so that protects you from missile attacks, and it also it protects you similarly to melee defense, but to a lesser extent from melee attacks. So it's a kind of an all-round statistic. It's kind of, you know, fairly useful generally, but unfortunately it's vulnerable to armor piercing, and armor piercing is a really big deal in this game. So, you know, don't don't rely too heavily on armour because it does have its drawbacks. Then we've got leadership. So as I explained previously, if this is high, your unit will be brave. If it's low, it won't be. If it goes below -1 during a battle, because it's subject to modifiers that you can see there in the UI, if it goes below 0, the unit will rout. My units have this by our blood ability, which means that for 30 seconds they won't rout if it goes below 0, so that's very useful. And most Kislev units are good for that. So if you don't like running away, Kislev is pretty good for you. Then we've got speed, so pretty self-explanatory. Explains how fast the unit moves. Melee attack determines how likely you are to hit. As I said, melee defense determines how likely you are to avoid being hit in close quarters melee combat. Weapon strength tells you how much weapon damage your units actually do when they hit, so it sort of combines with melee attack and strength. If your unit's got both high melee attack and strength, it's going to be a damage dealer, possibly a glass cannon unit, but maybe not. And then you've got lastly charge bonus. So this stacks with your melee attack bonus and weapon strength, and basically goes on top of any damage that you're doing and adds to those stats and just augments the others. So it can be useful situationally, and charge bonus will last you for a limited time. I think it might be 5-10 seconds, something like that, and then it wears off, but for a brief time it will do extra damage, so quite useful as well, particularly important for your cavalry and chariots and units like that. Something to keep an eye out on for those units.
Horse Raiders! March with pride!
Annihilate them! Taking position! Defenders of Kislev!
And I think we'll probably be winning this battle soon. We've almost lost a unit, but that doesn't matter. So Kosovite dervishes are, to be honest, they're not that great a unit anyway, but they're useful for scouting. So not the end of the world losing units, as long as you don't lose too many units. And ideally you don't want to be losing your lord or your heroes, because losing those can be quite a blow and they're difficult to replace. Sometimes they're impossible to replace, particularly if they are special characters and heroes and such.
Frost Maiden! I go!
Make war!
Led by right!
Hussars! So be it! On the march!
You'll see now that, like I showed you before, there's this momentum stat at the top. That's gradually building up as we capture more of these supply location points.
Sons of Kislev!
But I don't think that we're quite ready to take the center point yet. We might want to beat that hero because he's going to deal missile damage to us, so we probably want to move in on him.
March for Kislev! Following the squall!
Enemies, die! Hussars!
If you highlight your missile units, you'll notice that they have an extra bar, this brown bar here. It tells you how much ammo you have. You can also see the ammo stat. It only applies to missile units and artillery. You can see the ammo stat as well on the unit tile itself. And like I said before, you want to bring that up. It's just toggle unit details with I. Very useful, but can get in the way sometimes, so you might want to turn it off. But I usually keep it on when I'm in battles. It also modifies in real time, whenever you're hit by a spell, or whether you're damaged or buffed, or in any way, the unit stats change. They will change in real time, so it's a good idea to keep that on and just keep an eye on, what your units are right now. I'm just going to bring the timer forward a bit now because we're winning this battle, and it's probably going to end fairly soon. When you see your win odds here and your troop count above the enemies, you see they're pretty low now. This is the kind of point now when you're just trying to finish the battle and deal the killing blow. And you can see they're a demon enemy, so rather than running away like I showed you with leadership before, see they're negative leadership, rather than running away they're actually being banished. So demon units die, so it's even worse for them when they run away. Effectively it's even worse because they can't come back, they get banished to the Chaos Realm, and they're effectively out of the game at that point. I'm just taking the central point now, and that should help us finally finish the battle, and it will destroy any defensive structures you can see here. They'll just immediately explode, so it just makes the settlement easier to take at that point.
For the ice.
We're just going to move in on the enemy commander now, because if we finish him off at this point, the battle will almost certainly just end, because we have such a huge advantage at this point that killing him will tip the balance. He still has a few units left, but it doesn't matter that much. It's always, you're always keeping your eye on this tracker here in battles and reacting to that.
Go with honor.
Follow me, Cossacks! Go!
So if there's anything that you're unclear about in the comments, or you didn't think I explained in quite enough detail, let me know and I'll try and cover that in the next video for you.
Whatever Nursun asks! Bring them down!
But yeah, that's a fairly in-depth sort of look at how the battles and sieges work in this game, and you'll notice now that they're banishing army losses. So this is what happens right at the end of the battle when you trash the enemy army. They'll either all run away, or in the case of demons, they'll all be banished and they'll all disappear and you'll win. So that just tends to speed things up a bit towards the end of your battles. So we'll probably end this. Unfortunately, we have lost our. If the health has gone all the way down, that means your unit is probably dead. With the exception of maybe undead, for the most part, it means that unit is dead. And if it's greyed out like that, it means it's not coming back. You'll have to re-recruit another unit. But never mind, doesn't matter. We've got plenty of money. So losing a few units, not the end of the world. And you just go down at the bottom of the screen and click the left button, occupy. And we've got on this ancillary here, which will make our Sar Guard cheaper to maintain, so that's good. And we'll just run through here, and we've got some basic settlement management things to handle here. So just talking about growth, you can click these yourself and go ahead and read them, and because I'll be explaining them anyway in due course. And we've got some more ranks here.
Beyond Dervingard.
So okay, so we've we've taken the Loki Palace now. So well done if you've succeeded in that battle. If at any point things haven't gone as planned, you can actually, if your autosave option is turned on, you can just load the game and you can restart the turn, do the battle again, and that will save you a lot of time. But I was just checking that a minute ago. If you just, in the prologue campaign, it works exactly the same as the grand campaign. You can load the game, you go back to your autosaves, it should be set up to autosave every turn. I'm just going to do a video about this now actually, so look out for that, but it'll tell you all about the saving, how that works. If anything goes wrong, you can just load autosave, or if you just before a battle there, you have the quick save button, and you can also manually save, but I'm not sure that's in the prologue campaign. I'm just going to do a manual save now. But yeah, in the early part of the prologue campaign that won't be turned on, but your autosave should be turned on, and they'll let you continue from a position, probably previous turn, or I think it's the beginning of the next turn. It will let you, the beginning of the end of the last turn. It will let you carry on from. So okay, so I'll end the video there. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and I'll probably be putting up another video now about the autosaves. I've been Strategic Insights. Goodbye.